Welcome to second annual Grahm Memorial Poetry Award reading, otherwise known as Grahm Slam. And a big round of applause first for the man who's responsible for this award, sitting right here in the back row next to Miss Maurice, Joe Butler. And a round of applause for the person who got all of this set up and comfy and the food and all of that business, Miss Kit Maurice. And a round of applause for our illustrious judges. And last but not least, a big round of applause for our 9 finalists. I'll give you just a quick description of what's going to happen. The 9 finalists will come up one at a time. They'll each have approximately 5 minutes to read or perform whatever they like to do. At the end of that, our judges will tally up numbers that they placed in arbitrary categories on score sheets while you can help yourself to the refreshments on this table over here. Then back together and announce the order of the finalists 1 through 9, and that will be the end of our show. So, without further ado, are you ready? All right, very good. First up, please welcome to the stage, Marjorie Clemente.
My father is mystic. I don't praise him or belt out hymns, nor do I get on my knees and beg. There's no need for me to tuck a rosary or a cross beneath my pillow, or walk around with it in my pockets, or let it hang like a necklace over my car's rearview mirror. I feel something different. I feel a kind of cradling goodness that follows, maybe an entity. I feel it when reminiscing of times when things weren't always messed up between my old man and me. I can sit and talk to this benign creature and remember evenings of my father sitting in our basement listening to old reggae. He'd smoke a Cuban cigar and ask me to crack open a few beers. My father was a tired man. He said he was tired of living a mediocre life with us. His face, once animated, was now replaced with a worn mask from hours of sleeplessness. The creases on his warm face had indicated that the years had not been so subtle, and unforgivingly desiccated his brown skin. Being able to watch him this relaxed filled me with an unspeakable happiness. Whatever bothered him on the inside would trickle away with the beer, and heavy cigar smoke tickling his breath. He kept his feet propped up on his big sofa looking like Papa Bear. And reggae was the only music he truly loved that was in English. He had an ear for translating Bob Marley's lyrics and understanding the cadence of the dialect. Those evenings were almost ritualistic. We'd kick back wearing an Afrocentric cap on his melon head, and we would croak and cry out along with Marley's drawl. Meanwhile, he would beat time on the skin of his combos. It was the closest that I could ever get to my old man. Music, incense, all tumbling together in one room. And I'm telling you, I don't need to clutch a crucifix or recite a piece of scripture to know that there is a God. And I don't know what it looks like, but it was there then when my old man taught me to listen to each melody to the next. Thank you. All right, can everyone hear me all right from this corner? Let's go back and forth with the mic. All right, great. Without further ado, next to the stage, Mr. Ira Watts.
Actually, I have a couple of poems to read. The Anonymous Boy. There's a boy who wants to fall, but he's unsure there's a bungee. He's all about his business. I search without no help. There's a boy who won the prize car and found out might should be a ring. Does he show it off or leave it in the park because attachment isn't simple? There's a boy who gets high and intends to never be down. Things are perfect but not as good as they sound. There's a boy who leans on his shoulder, but someone tilts it to the ground. He tries to hide his true feelings with all his fears around. There was a boy who lost his opens due to a girl who couldn't keep her legs closed. Is this boy you? Could be me, I suppose. This poem is called Change. Once a shy young boy, now I'm a tall, dark, and handsome man. Used to hate to see my pops at the bottom. Now I'm the one with the can. From the south side streets to the sweet streets of Evansville, I'm thankful my mom moved in the streets when no one was killed. It seems like yesterday I was on the college campus stealing Reese's. Now I'm 21 with 2 nieces. As a teenager, I envisioned myself wearing a jersey. Whoever thought my feet would be over other stages reading poetry. 2 shoulder dislocations came and robbed me of my passion. Dark road destiny, searching for a passion. My flashlight in face soon cleared me a path. Change the time almost demolishes me. Here you stand, you see the aftermath. This poem's called In the Morning. It's 5:35 as I watch the sunrise. I am thinking of you, so I thought I'd give you a surprise. A piece of my mind, which marked the last piece of my thigh. So sweet to me, will someone touch it and got. I can't complain a lot, but sometimes I need clarity. I hope my genuine feelings are hidden behind my parody. Seems as most are worried about when we're going to be together. I'm worried about the next time we get to be together. At the stage in life, let's be directors, not actors. Let's focus on us, which is the only relevant factor. Everyday living is another closer to dying. Therefore, it's safe to set it out and die trying. Until the fat lady sings. As the rooster calls, the pain is still there. Timothy struggles to find gas to put in his engine up and mind. The pouring rain from the April showers make everything blurry. There is no sign of the rainbow at the end. This cave, this dungeon, this black hole isn't like home, he says to himself. Then he remembers that there is no place like home. Clicking his heels together, repeating the refrains with his eyes closed. Timothy hopes for a shortcut from his misery. But then suddenly feels his body inflate. He opens his eyes and is blinded by the light. But still, in the same boat we had awakened. But he's not the same though. He is rejuvenated by hope. Faith that struck him like a lightning bolt. Timothy now believes that he can be. He knows he's not whole yet. Until the fat lady sings. And this will be my last one. This poem is called Unstoppable. I ain't unstoppable. I ain't unstoppable because I'm the only force that can stop me. I ain't unstoppable because I'm prepared for the vision that only I can see. I ain't unstoppable because I'm undefeated against all obstacles. I ain't unstoppable because I believe the word impossible. I ain't no believer. I ain't no believer because complete optimism is my only choice. I ain't no believer because I have a mouth and a voice. I ain't no believer because I believe my mark on this world will be remarkable. I ain't no believer, and I ain't unstoppable.
All right, next up is Ben Craig.
This is ridiculously long, so first of all, I'd like to apologize. I try to cut as much as I can out of it. This is called The Surmountable Void. My adrenaline rage as blood surged through my bulging veins, prompting me to burst out the handcuffs that restrained me. I was an impatient and angry 22-year-old, situated uncomfortably in the back of a police cruiser. I was being arrested for DUI, even though I was sober when my tiny sports car slid off the rural road into a shallow ditch. The cyclonic wind penetrated to the bone, so I was a bit relieved to be inside of the car, silently awaiting my fate. The pudgy Italian officer that arrested me was around 5 foot 10 inches tall, had black, slick-back hair, beady eyes, and a trimmed mustache. So, we have a report that you were attempting a B&E at this residence, he said, as he pointed his chubby finger toward the old farmhouse adjacent to where my car sat in the narrow ditch. I never have and I never will understand people like you. You justify the Second Amendment. I really wish that the old woman had had a gun pointed straight at your fucking face when you broke in. Wow, really? I was only going to ask to use the phone, I said. I live about 2 miles away and started to walk. I realized I didn't have any warm enough clothes on, so I decided I needed to call home for a ride. I didn't try to break in. I walked into the breezeway and knocked on the door a few times. No one answered, so I grabbed a half pint out of my trunk and started to walk home, I explained. You mean to tell me that even a lush like you doesn't have a cell phone? His brown eyes were empty and the left side of his lip was raised in a contemptible sneer. I do, but it's dead. It's in my car, you can see for yourself. Oh, you can bet on that, he said as he forcefully produced a manila envelope from the glove box. This guy's just trying to get under my skin and make me say something I'll regret. Keep cool, Will. Keep cool. Well, he said, sifting his fat thumb through the 2 or 3 documents that sealed my fate, the official police report, I'm happy to report that you're officially being charged with B&E as well as DUI. Any questions? He wore a penetrating smile on his face, the likes of which gave me the feeling he would love to produce his gun from his holster and pistol with me in the face. No, take me to jail, I said with confidence and an air of indifference. With pleasure, he snarled as he revved up the engine, shifted gears, and with a heavy foot, accelerated onto the precarious road. I was put into a small temporary holding cell with one other person, a black man that appeared to be about 6 foot 4 inches tall, powerfully built with dreadlocks and a kind face. He undoubtedly had on what he was arrested in, a white t-shirt, blue jeans, and a pair of expensive-looking leather sandals. What's up, blood? What you in for? DUI and a bullshit B&E charge. I'm Will, by the way. Cyrus at your service, man. My girl called the cops on me because I came home late as fuck stinking of booty and yak, he said, theatrically covering his eyes with his right hand in supposed shame. Anyhow, my woman told the cops that I was beating on the door and shit, threatening to break it down and whoop her ass. The bitch didn't even let me in my own house. Ain't that some shit? I was picturing the questionable scenario in my mind, lost in my thoughts when I noticed he had extended his hand. Damn, man, she sounds fierce, I said, trying to suppress my laughter as I reached out my hand, grasping Cyrus's hand in a firm traditional handshake. For sure, you're right, cuz she raw, my warrior woman. I love my lady, but damn, booty be taunting me, looming over me all day and night. I'm powerless, son. Aren't we all? I said, wishing I thought of something better to say. He simply nodded at this and lay down on his steel bed, covered by only a half-inch thick foam-filled mat, the standard layout. I suddenly realized how exhausted I was and took Cyrus's cue and sauntered over to my own joke of the bed and flopped down on my stomach, almost immediately slipping into a deep sleep. I was awakened by strange sounds and I couldn't quite make out my delirious state. As I lazily opened my eyes, I saw Cyrus just a few feet away, sitting Indian style with his hands rested on his thighs and melodiously humming a chant that I couldn't quite make out. As if to appease my curiosity, he suddenly opened his eyes. Rise and shine, dog. This here's my morning routine, no matter where I be at, but I'll get to that. But first, I got some shit I need to share with you, Will, he said, tossing up a generic honey bun, compliments of the fine chefs of Vermilion County. I caught the snack and suddenly realized how hungry I was. Good looking out, man. Go ahead, I'm listening, I said, feeling irritated that I was still in jail and didn't dream last night's experience. Well, a couple of years ago, somebody mailed some 30 books here to the PSB. My cousin was up in here around that time for blowing blunt smoke into a cop's face. The chief there thought that some shady shit was going down at first. He asked all the inmates if they had the books sent, and they all said no. My cousin, named Cameron, by the way, became obsessed with finding out about the books. The chief, after going through each book cover to cover looking for guns, drugs, or other paraphernalia, decided to add the literature to our small-ass library that mostly got books that became movies. That's the background. Check this out. When Cam got out, he was changed, Will. Changed. This was the dude that I ran with since birth. We straight knuckleheads, robbing tourists, and any motherfucker that looked weak to us. We always felt untouchable, like Achilles. But right now, Cam's a philosophy major in Chi-Town, a sophomore that's been making straight A's since he got there. Intrigued, I sat, allowing Cyrus's words to paint elaborate and vivid pictures in my mind. I pondered the power of literature and how it can impart enough wisdom to free the minds of those that were stuck in hopeless circumstances. Let me guess, the meditation was inspired from a book from an anonymous donation. You sharpest attack, Will. This is from the Upanishads, which is the root of Hinduism, basically. I read most of the Bible and parts of the Grahm, but nothing reached me like the ancient Indian sages that wrote the Vedas. Will, he said, wide-eyed and pacing, can you imagine being in complete control of yourself, so focused that you realize that there is no you, just an essence so vast that it's part of everything that exists? I want that more than anything. After only a week of meditating, I had my first good night of sleep. No nightmares of the families and people that I killed, the hate in their eyes, the blame, the guilt. I was touched by Cy's openness, impressed with his knowledge. I realized that who I saw before me did not appear to be a threat to anyone anymore. He was a human being capable of achieving virtue, honor, and respect, just as all cognitive beings capable of complex thought and deep sentiments are equipped to accomplish. He was not doomed. I can't wait to read it, I said, truly excited. It reminds me of Buddhism. Before Cyrus could reply, a guard came in and explained to us that since it was Saturday, a judge wouldn't be available to formally arraign us until Monday, and so we were going to now be transferred into general population. This, I knew, meant that we would be in the designated area of a block in which we lived with around 20 or 30 other inmates. Cyrus and I followed the guard into a small nearby room full of tall, dilapidated lockers. Okay, now I'm going to need you guys to strip down your bare asses so I can thoroughly search you before we can wear your new stylish orange jumpsuit, the guard said, smiling, flashing a gold tooth. You can choose your locker and you don't need a lock. I'll keep track of your precious things, so help me, he said, delicately placing his right hand over his chest. Okay, who's first? Me, sighed Boone. You got us an eager man. You eager, are you, boy? Cyrus said nothing and quickly undressed, awaiting further instruction. I thought you black boys were supposed to be packing. Seem to disprove that myth. Now touch your toes and spread them. I noted Cyrus's patience, all while drinking in this disgusting display of inexcusable behavior. The guard never for a second got to him in any way. He seemed transfixed in a mental state that transcended degradation and humility. Slave narratives that I had read thus far permeated my thoughts, filling me with insurmountable rage, the likes of which fiendishly allowed my mind to picture myself brutally slaughtering this poor excuse for a human being. Cyrus was nothing but an insolent chattel to the guard that had to be defiled and stripped of dignity and self-worth. After establishing that Cyrus was not smuggling anything, the guard turned toward me. All right, man, you ready? Same drill. I undressed as quickly as possible, quickly stuffing my clothes into the nearby locker, all the while sadly cursing myself for not voicing my revulsion in regard to this treatment of Cyrus, feeling guilty that he didn't regard me in the same manner, as if I were better than Cyrus due to my skin color and non-threatening appearance. It is odd, I thought, that my erratic nature was quelled in this place of detention. I knew that any outburst would only hinder my chance for freedom, given the uncontrollable situation. Okay, go ahead now, bend down as far as you can for me. I know how it seems, but this here's procedure, we have to do it, the guard stated diffidently. After only a brief moment more, about half the time that it had taken to press side, I was given my new attire, the elegant orange jumpsuit, tattered, wrinkled, and about 2 sizes too small for me. The guard then led us to our new home, C block. As I followed the guard in silent tow, we came upon a giant steel door that could only be opened from one side. Punching in the code on the steel keypad in a highly practiced manner, the guard stayed where he was, and the giant door slowly began to creep open. A CO, or corrections officer, was waiting on the other side. He was around 6 feet tall and gangly, with fiery red hair, donning the typical corrections officer uniform, a tan button-up shirt with dark brown slacks and shiny shoes. Little did I know that something as seemingly trivial as a pair of dress shoes would fill me with rage for years to come. After witnessing the degradation of the guard with the gold tooth that had just attempted to inflict upon Cyrus, I correlated assholes such as the ones that I had the displeasure of knowing with their obsession to look honorable and dignified. To this day, I loathe the sight of his excessively shiny shoes. Welcome to C Block, gentlemen. I hope there's no problems between you two because you're going to be cellmates. It tends to work out better this way as opposed to just tossing you guys into the sharks, the red-headed CO said. Just then, I managed to catch a glimpse of his brass name tag. Phillips, it read. Relieved about our living arrangement, I tailed Cyrus and Phillips as we followed the ladder to our 6x8 cell. As I looked around, I counted 25 inmates, 10 white, 1 Mexican, and around 12 black men. Everyone seemed to be too engaged with what they were doing to acknowledge us. Almost everybody was playing cards, with a select few gazing up at the TV that was bolted high upon the north wall. C Block consisted of a large gathering area with 10 tables, complete with 5 small oval stools surrounding them, all constructed of stainless steel and securely bolted to the cold cement ground. The ground floor had 10 cells stretching along the east wall, and there was a staircase that ascended up to the second floor, also with 10 cells, which was constructed out of steel, welded together what reminded the early stages of the construction project. Once introduced to our cell, and after exchanging several stories about our lives, Cyrus and I decided to pick up where we left off in our conversation. We began to talk about the similarities of Eastern and Western philosophy when a figure appeared in our cell, which was at this time open. I glanced over and saw it was the Mexican man I saw upon arrival. What up, guys? Can I come in? Mi casa es su casa, Cyrus said with a decent Spanish accent. Ah, habla español? Nah, not really, Cyrus said cruelly. Well, anyway, I heard you guys talking in here and it sounded deep. I just had to get in on it. I'm sick of talking to dumbasses who can only carry on conversations about hustling, fucking, and how hard they think they are. Word, I feel you, Cyrus said. Papa Squat, man. My colleague and I see, we were just discussing the fact that Western philosophers always be describing absolutes to shit they don't even fully understand. And the Asian cats simplify, only sometimes they do it in riddles and parables. You know, kind of like Jesus, which can make the idea seem a little more complicated. Damn, that shit's a little deep, a little too over my head, man. I'm Tony, by the way, he said, shaking hands first with Cyrus, then with me. Tony was about my height, 5'8" tall, with dark wavy hair and dark brown eyes. He seemed like a bit of a contradiction in that he always seemed to be anxious and calm all at once, always moving his hands from his pockets to his sides and wiping off his brow, though he wasn't sweating. So, Tony, I inquired, do you know anything about the anonymous donation of books to the library? Yeah, I guess somebody stole a book a few months back, and the chief told us that until they found out who did it and how, the library was going to be closed. It's messed up, man. I never would have thought that I would get into poetry and stuff like that. There were some good books in there. What you mean closed, Cyrus snarled. You kidding me? I'm not standing for this shit, man. Cyrus began to shake with rage upon hearing this news, and he immediately withdrew to his bed, where he sat upright, his barrel chest heaving. At that point, I was sure that something big was going to happen, but nothing could prepare me for the events that followed. Tony, Cyrus called. You got a pen and some paper, man? For sure. I'll be right back. With that, Tony rushed out of the cell. Shortly thereafter, I lay down and succumbed to the night full of troubled sleep, rife with dreams of warfare amongst the several classes of people within society as we know it. The next morning, we were all released from our cells in order to wait in line for breakfast, which was slid through a rectangular slot built into the giant steel door that Sinai had arrived through. Cyrus had become silent since last night's news about the library, and I decided to honor his grief and remain quiet, allowing him to speak first whenever he was ready. Food was slid through the slot on sectional trays, and Cyrus and I received ours at the same time. As I scanned the room for a place to sit, I heard a loud crash behind me. I turned around to find that Cyrus had dropped his tray and scrambled eggs, toast, a dry biscuit, and a small carton of milk were scattered all over the floor. God damn it, the CEO serving the food exclaimed from the other side of the door. Open C block, he barked at Phillips, the red-haired CEO. After the door was open, the CEO had reached Cyrus and pointed at the mess. You did that shit on purpose. No, it was an accident, sir, Cyrus said, smirking. The hell, you say? Well, it looks like we got ourselves a new cleaning bitch at C block. Why can't we check out books anymore, Cy demanded. Well, it seems that one of you degenerates stole one of them, so we are dead set on finding out who, no matter how long it takes. Cyrus broke eye contact with the officer and gazed down at the floor, seemingly defeated and glum. Oh, what's the matter? You think there's something in those books for you? Well, there's not. We don't have any books with pictures of white women and basketball stars. With that, Cyrus sprang at the officer with deadly precision, landing a barrage of jabs, crosses, and hooks with his powerful hands, followed up by snatching the stunned officer by his hair with both hands and forcefully pulling his head down towards Cy's rising knee, resulting in a sickening thud that sent shivers up my spine. Blood was spattered all over Cyrus's face and clothes, and there was a look of bloodlust in his eyes, which were previously bright and genial, now flashing with the utmost intensity, giving me an experience of what temporary insanity truly looks like. Not a moment later, 3 officers came sprinting through the door. Cyrus stood fast, hands at his sides. The short, obese man in the lead produced a stout flashlight about 8 inches in diameter and fiercely struck Cyrus's temple with it, sending him straight to the ground in a crumpled heap. The other inmates were acting like animals. Some were jumping on tables, beating on their chests. Others were piercingly applauding Cyrus's efforts. No one bothered to see if he was okay. And just as I crouched down beside him, using my tattered sleeve in a futile attempt to stop the bleeding, a guard violently shoved me aside, causing me to tumble over. The hell, man? He wasn't resisting. I was uncalled for, I blurted out, enraged by the whole scene. Mind your business, kid. This here's a hardened criminal. His forte is to be mobbing little white boys like yourself, so don't go crying over this wasted skin. Everybody get yourselves now. Shut up, the obese guard bellowed. Phillips, get a couple of stretchers from the infirmary. The practiced hatred in his voice was evident, and in that moment, I felt devoid of all feeling. Back in my cell, now alone, I prayed for Cyrus to be okay. As I was pacing back and forth in the tiny room, I noticed a slip of paper in my hand. I unfolded it, and it read, Will, I believe that everything happens for a reason and that we were meant to meet and learn from each other. While talking to you, I really felt that you understood me as a man and not just as a black man. Thank you for this. You are privileged, educated, and white, and yet you seem to empathize with the poor and struggling masses. I have a favor to ask you, bro. Be the voice of the voiceless. Tell the story of the struggling, inner-city youths, the poor, the hungry, the forgotten, and all lost souls. I have a feeling that is your calling. I hope to see you soon. Your brother, Cyrus. I was released from jail 3 days after the incident with Cyrus with Grahm. I learned the following morning that the attacker Cyrus had died from a vicious blow to the head. The guard that Cyrus had attacked suffered from a broken jaw as well as a broken nose. The guy that killed him was fired but was not charged with murder, getting off by exclaiming he was acting in self-defense. There was never an article written about the vicious murder, only a poorly written obituary dedicated to Cyrus, which always makes me cry when I think about it. Cyrus Jackson, survived by his wife of 2 years, Esmeralda Lobos, and 5-year-old son, Malcolm McConaughey Jackson. Also survived by his cousin, Cameron Unoka Jackson. I sent Esmeralda a heartfelt letter explaining what had happened to her husband, as well as monthly checks consisting of whatever I could spare to help her raise Malcolm. She was eternally grateful but considered his death her fault. Upon request, she sent me a picture of Malcolm, a very striking resemblance to his father, save for dreadlocks. It's been 8 years since my experience, and now I'm happily struggling to find my voice as a writer. For the first couple of years, I secretly plotted revenge, street justice, by taking the life of the man that murdered my friend, whose son would grow up fatherless. I was very close to burning his bachelor pad, located in a quiet part of town, to the ground with him in it, an accidental explosion. I eventually realized that vengeance would only breed more pain. It would transform me into a lost soul, robbing me of what innocence I had clung to thus far and haunting me for the rest of my life. I decided to channel my seething rage and agony into writing literature. I still think about Cyrus Hall that he taught me about human nature and the struggle to overcome one's innate animal instincts. I've been struggling to acquire the funds necessary to launch a literary magazine, and it's honor that I wish to call The Righteous Offender, which will be filled with poetry, memoirs, essays, short fiction, and artwork from prisoners across the globe.
This is called How Long It Goes. Jim Schwindel studied the date on his newspaper. July 13th, he said. Margaret passed away 8 years ago today, just a few months before their 41st wedding anniversary, dead at 73. Schwindel took a bite of toast and put the paper down, staring at the tabletop. He thought about the horrible 6-year-old pile of disordered manuscripts and notebooks still sitting on one side of his big oak desk in the next room. He thought about her. Everything is blue. I will never see Margaret again. The gravity here is different. Everything is heavier. Everything is blue. The turquoise ferns and robin egg pebbles, the aquarium light diffused through cobalt clouds, the hint of midnight from a brazen beetle's smooth shell, everything is blue. 2 hours later, he arranged the manuscripts and notebooks in neat stacks. He went into the bathroom and washed his hands and face, shaking his head at his own gray haggardness in the mirror. Then he went out down the stairs from his 4th floor apartment. Moving out of their silent, memory-laden house was the first thing he'd done after the funeral. After a hamburger and another cup of coffee, he decided to go to a movie. It'd be a hard day. He walked downtown, hoping there would be a science fiction movie, Jurassic Park maybe, or the original Invaders from Mars. But nothing like that was playing, and he settled for a musical, going into the dark little auditorium and hunting out a remote seat on the aisle. An advertisement was in progress, and he watched it without interest, suddenly wishing he had a flashlight and a National Geographic to thumb through. The musical came on in rude colors. It was boring and loud. Schwindel tried to lose himself in the pointless motion, but found he couldn't, and had to content himself at first with the taut bosoms and long legs of the young women in the picture. This was distracting enough in itself, but it was the kind of distraction that could be painful, as well as ridiculous, for an elderly widower. Fidgeting, faced with blatant sexuality, he shifted his attention to photography. When that didn't work, he cleaned his glasses on his handkerchief to avoid looking at the screen. And finally, when one of the pink images shed at his ear, he had to shut his eyes and turn away until the soundtrack indicated that the scene was over. Afterward, agitated and not wanting just yet to have to go home and stare at those manuscripts again, he found himself looking for one of the bars where the students hung out. On their 40th wedding anniversary, Margaret hadn't remembered. She didn't even know who he was by then. He left her in the care of a temporary nurse that night and ran off to such a bar. Ended up hopping into bed with some bubblehead at least 30 years younger than he, Christy something or other. He hadn't been able to get it up and endured some hurtful teasing from Christy something before returning home, feeling gutted, ashamed, and scared. He'd never been able to forgive himself for that attempted infidelity. Presently, he found a small taproom named Marty's with steins in the front windows. He opened the door and was greeted by the subdued anguish of a jukebox that dominated the center of one wall, pulsating with bass sound and red light like an unhealthy heart. He walked in between rows of plastic booths sprinkled with summer students. A few were bearded and shabby, wannabe revolutionaries, and behind the beards, Illinois and Iowa farm boys, most of them. For a moment he felt uneasy, a tired old man with a new class. He found a space at the bar and ordered for a beer from a woman with grayish bangs and black-rimmed glasses. He nodded at her and guzzled it, feeling uncomfortable, wanting to get out. On the jukebox, now behind his head, a CD had started playing a folk song with a thrumming zither. Next to him at the bar, a red-headed girl conversed with a gloomy-eyed girl about the texture of language, a kind of talk that made Schwindel shudder. He finished his beer and then ordered another without knowing why, even though he wanted to leave, to get away from the noise and pomposity. Drinking his third, images from the musical flickered across his mind. He smiled at the redhead next to him. She couldn't have been more than 18. She gave him a doubtful look, her dark eyes grave, and he felt something hurt him. She was so attractive. He finished his beer and left. It was still almost too warm when he walked directly home. For a moment he thought of Jackson, his one close friend on the faculty before their simultaneous retirements at the turn of the millennium, and wished he could call him. Jackson had been an understanding man until his cancer-aided death last year, after months in a sleep hospital. There would not seem to be anything to say right now anyway. Schwindel did not want to talk about himself, his fear, his cheap lust, his dreadful and stupid life, not to Margaret, Jackson, God, or anyone. There was a dreary and bird-noisy sky outside the bedroom window. He sat red-eyed and staring for several minutes on the unmade bed. Then he went into his office and looked at the walls, crowded with movie posters. He looked at the ancient gray-painted steam radiator and its venerable ironwork cover. On one side of his desk, his typewriter sat like a mundane and boorish god, still holding the 17th page of the fantasy he'd started not long after moving in, a work unsought, unhonored, and one that would probably always remain unfinished. He looked in his files, full of manuscripts from decades past, most never published but impossible to throw away. Everything so special, but only to him. His one and only book had never been reprinted, and he hadn't sold a story in over 20 years. Hell, I was going to conquer the world and be the greatest in history. Schwindel stood with his hands in his pockets and stared at his feet, aware of the day's sweat on his body like a damp film. God damn it, he exhaled, exhausted. He opened a drawer and withdrew his will, dropping it on top of the stacked manuscripts on his scarred desk. Then he straightened up and walked wearily back out the apartment door, shutting it softly behind him. I jumped blind into the void, with fingers crossed, an endless howling nothing, and came to another lonely world. At his feet, the beetle moves away from him, a dark blue bead rolling through flowers the color of ice, September sky, Margaret's eyes. Schwindel leaned back in the driver's seat. He hit the gas hard, then released it, and hit it again, wondering if he would survive a head-on collision at this speed. It would look like an accident. Old man had fallen asleep at the wheel. That's what the obituary would say anyway. Hit the accelerator, Lord, I can hardly wait. When was the last time he'd said that? When he was a kid, he had a list of hard to wait for things. Christmas, fried morels in the spring, sweet Easter and Halloween, Universal Monster films. He left the car slow, staring ahead. Dear Margaret. He thought back to college. Jim Schwindel, the handsome dog, more mature than his peers, though they were the same age. Jim Schwindel, who raced across the campus on the bodies of the moaning girls, where all he had to do was glance and they swooned before him. Later the marriage, Jim and Margaret. In the mornings she'd make him breakfast, humming while she worked. She was never able to whistle. In the evenings he'd read to her while she bathed. Every summer they didn't spend teaching, they'd spend traveling the continent, always promising each other that next time they would go overseas. Fast then slow he drove. What would he say first as soon as he showed up? Hello? Hi God, what's new? Margaret, you're really here. How you been? What? You're the so-called writer. Make something up. A celebration. A poem. No, you've never been great with poems. How about, would it be enough to just say, I love you? He slowed the car even more, looking through the windshield at evening shadows. But what if she wasn't there? She would be. She must be. Good was what she was. She'd had a good life, a good marriage. She'd be there. She'd been good, absolutely incredibly good. She'd be there. That would be the proof, wouldn't it? That he was in the right place? 8 years to the day of her arrival, he arrived behind her. He stepped on the gas again, aimed at a distant telephone pole. The tears that had been building in his eyes finally escaped. What the hell, by God, what the hell? Only this monochrome world will have me now. Mustn't think of Margaret, mustn't consider the distance between us, or else one might forever hear her screaming into the silent blue. One color, one word, the color of a jay's wing, the color of coursing police lights spread across apartment windows, of the pale vein tracery under the ghost flesh of her forearms underside, of solitude and sadness. The clouds simmer above him in blue monotony. He walks on the soil alone amongst the ultramarines and indigos, into territories deep and unglimpsed. He recalls her cheekbones, her bird-like hands, her legs moving as she walked towards him the night they met, the novelty of her body. Oh, Margaret, what would she say to him now? He thinks of her smile, the subtle curve of her lips. His throat tightens. Missing her embrace, he sinks to his knees. From the cobalt clouds, large drops of rain begin to fall.
A rabbit, or raccoon, or fox, or bear, climb every tree a world of pure imagination, even Willy Wonka would empty. But perhaps Peter was right, and girls are just too clever to get lost. I'll just grow up, get old, and wash the dishes. Scientifically inaccurate. Tyrannosaurus queen, born on a Sunday in a straw fern nest Papa made of things stolen. Couldn't walk quite right, so great big mama waddled over, licked her clean, sang a lullaby, and gave a name that's long lost to history. For a while, life was all piles of jelly beans and other normal dinosaur things, until the day she woke up and no one was there. Not her great big mama, or papa, or a brother, or a sister, or the little boy who lived down the way. The only company she kept was the dark mist consuming the air, while the ground below bubbled, contorted, boiled like a stew that cooked her inside out. She bit at the air to stay alive until that big black sky reached in and took her will, let it go, empty and alone in a great big world. And that very last dinosaur cried tears that streaked her cheeks and salted the earth, left her eyelashes so sticky that she could barely see. She gave up, heart broke, legs weak, belly achy, tired. She lay down and never got up again, became a pile of bones, a relic, a fossil, a whisper, and a tumbleweed, pulled apart across the plains of Pangea. Bills and rockets, Lord my sister. I yelled, "Hey, diddle diddle, how did your cow jump over that moon?" And the cat grinned with twisted whiskers, played Claire the Loon on his violin, and the bovine danced in the night, into the sky and over the moon, kept on going past the edge of the solar system, and got lost, somewhere near Andromeda. I asked my sister if she knew how to sing, but she could only hum little melodies from old nursery rhymes. She learned that when she was little, and her spine was broken. She once said that she never missed walking since she never did learn, and I thought that was sad, until I thought that it wasn't. I imagined her soul climb out of her topmost vertebrae, onto hospital floors, slide across puddles of spinal fluid, surf through hallways and into highways, leapfrog by cars across the state, nation, continent, hemisphere, oceans, and sky, sing the world like she never would. As we filled bellies with chicken nuggets and Easy Mac, firmly rooted to the earth with 2 feet in a chair with wheels, we stared up at that cheese-filled moon and started to hum Claire the Loon, hoping that her feet would start tapping and her body would start drifting, way, way away from way down here. But Mr. Diddle Diddle lost his fiddle, so we sat fist clenched on the tippy top of the earth with no music and waited until we didn't anymore. My sister and I built a spaceship of silly putty and robot bits, with gears that ground and fueled and fired. But it couldn't go, because nobody told us how to build the rocket ship. Still, we played pretend until I swear to little baby Jesus that we felt it rock right into the dark night sky. And when we took off, we missed the moon. Because the moon has no gravity, and our rocket had no steering wheel. Instead, we followed Betsy into the stars and swooned at the sight of all the worlds in the whole universe, blinking at us. Beep, beep, boop. That's the name. Android, Mandroid, Cyborg, Flash Forward, the Terminator is unending. She is a humanoid and crying about it. Tears made from oiled black streaks stain the polyplastic elastic vinyl porcelain mask she wears. It's got cracks. This is the future and she's a robot. And she's a she just because she says so. She's got no parts, just a chest, wide, round, smooth, and a shiny little ass with hips that pivot, ball in socket, ball in chain, but the old gal sure can dance like a robot or a word or a sprinkler system. H2O or motor oil, can't tell the difference. Down the hatch, and there she blows. 1 0 1 0 0 0 1 0 1 1 1 0 0. sting in her hollow legs. Thinks she's nervous, but she has no nerves. Swears sweat swelters against the small of her back, pulling against smooth chrome. Pulse, pulse, pulse means there's a heartbeat. But when he tells her that he loves her, wants to rest together at the lips, the feeling does not compute, and the automaton breaks his fleshy heart. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Mr. Mark Grahm.
When you like vanilla ice cream, that's when you know. When it's not chock full of shit, just a plain vanilla ice cream, that's when you know. When your brother's beard falls off, you start your own. When the doctors take his leg and they take his eye. When you stop going for runs so it's not an empty stare from his bedroom window light, that's when you know. Someday you bring home a girl and vanilla ice cream, which is something he hates. And he hates to sit there and watch you two spoon vanilla ice cream around. Nobody wants to ask you how he's doing or the chemo. Nobody wants to ask you about vanilla ice cream. It's not worth repeating. Up late at night, it's him, vanilla ice cream, all dead poisoned. And sometimes the taste won't be such a big deal. And you get a laugh that couldn't make this house up. And you both kiss vanilla ice cream in a silent kitchen. And that's when you know. This is titled Cracks. If you look close at your hand and then your finger, and you get real close to the skin, there are these little cracks, and inside of them are more. And you and me were made of these tectonic wrinkles. And when we nest, we're married. Or when I make you sit by me at the piano and you are drinking a white wine. If you look close, it's all cracking up and down, rooted and split. The earth without water, the wine glass on the floor. My last poem is titled April 2nd. Today you are dying, little by little. Tomorrow, who knows? Today you've got that squeeze and the shock and the tiny kiss. Tomorrow, who knows? Not me, not you, not today. Tomorrow, who knows? Today our kid unwound the garden hose and struck a butterfly with the hot nozzle. Today he ran away from me, and tomorrow, who knows? Today I got real close, watched the tiny legs curl on the sidewalk, the powdered wings pressed below. Tomorrow they'll be gone, or breezed into the lawn like seeds. To weep, to scrape, to slay, to wake. Today you won't even look at me. To weep today. Today I made us dance on a log, and tomorrow is tumor. And sometimes you and I, we say, today's a new day. But tomorrow, who knows? Thanks.
And finalist number 7, Mr. TJ Marks.
This story is called Piecework in the Time of Pistons and Prostitutes. The bells above the door chirped and a woman walked in, her head cast shoulder to shoulder like she was expecting someone. As the door closed, it ushered in that dour smell of a rain threatening to fall. Her hair, pinned straight, stood upright on her head. She wore a sequin miniskirt which changed color with every step under the overhead lights. Her tooth top left a bright nipple, half exposed like a half-waning moon. A cigarette burned in her hands. Watched her approach. She placed her purse on the counter and began rooting inside of it, discarding receipts, hard candy wrappers, and loose change, searching for something. During these slow nights at the bowling alley, Wasp read from a 1993 mechanic's guide, which had been stashed into the secondary cash register for the 4 years he'd been working there. When she walked in, he'd been looking at a diagram of a piston, pulled apart, its pieces labeled A, B, C, and D. Lines were drawn from each dissected piece to its point of origin, silently insisting they could be brought back together. You could spend hours dwelling on this diagram alone, studying the shapes of each piece, the shadows on their surfaces, and the thin lines which promise to make something whole out of them. He cleared his throat. "You can't smoke in here. I'm sorry, ma'am. Are you here to bowl?" She stopped her scanning suddenly, running a hand through the scorched string of her hair, turning around, looking out over the desolate lanes, scanning the panorama, her eyes, squinting in the smoke. "The place is really gone to shit, kid. I used to come in here when I was younger. You see the wall behind that pool table? And you see the mirror hanging there below that? That's where I got fucked up for the first time." Wasp nodded. He wasn't sure why. He nodded with the sudden image of a faceless man holding a peaceless woman, her breast disembodied, cupped and cradled. She cleared her throat. "You don't ever forget it, kid. First hands that aren't your own. But some days you come close to it. They're covered in teenage sweat, they're gentle in their stupid ignorance. And then you run into the guy years down the line in a grocery store. The first thing that runs through your head is, well, how many women has he fucked up since? It's a stupid thought for an old woman to be thinking about an old man, but still you think it. And you do some quick math in your head. You calculate how many lovers a person can have in a month. And you multiply that by 12. And then you do some quick math and multiply that number by how many years it was since you and he were pressed up against a wooden paneled wall, his hand down your skirt, shaking with nerves against your skin. You subtract if you see a ring on his hand, but you leave some room for the casual mishaps. All of this happens when you thought you were close to forgetting it, and while he's standing there in front of you, next to the vegetables, he's fumbling for something to say that does bring either of you back too far. And then you walk into a bowling alley you've been close to forgetting, and you see the place where you felt his breast swinging the weight of a pressing hand, which wasn't your own, and you remember his young face, and you think of his old face you've seen since, and you try to translate that moment. You feel it again, like you're walking back to where it all began and still begins. Hands over your body, cold with wet rain, warming on your scared and excited skin. My God. Strange things. Wasp nodded again, feeling faint. He pulled his eyes away from dwelling on the rough curve of her breast, the way she could look around the room, point to moments where she had left a portion of herself, the way she could discuss how and when and who and what and why with a disconnect, the left wasp buckling at his knees, his eyes snapping back and forth from her breast and the smoke circling her head like a halo. She said, "I always hated bowling. It was for something else that I came here. That's strange, isn't it?" It wasn't strange to him, but he didn't say this, he didn't answer. The rain quickened and clapped along the tin roof like hurried footsteps. He looked to the wall behind the pool table and imagined this woman as a young woman, a young girl. He could envision her almost perfectly, pressed against the wooden panels beneath the Budweiser mirror, her head thrown back with the thick, long curls of her hair scaling the wall behind her like vines growing up out of the earth. Her back a clean canvas, stretched tight against jutting forthright bones, her left knee rising to her hip, a short skirt pushed back, and a dapper kid kissing her exposed neck, his hands seemingly and everywhere at once, brushing the youth from her still smooth legs. Yeah, he imagined her like this, whispering to whoever was by her side, "This isn't what I came here for." The woman turned around and began rooting back through her purse, her tongue held between her teeth, finally pulling out a condom. She looked down at the silver watch, just wrapping her toothpick wrist. "I'm guessing that's the boss's office," she said, pointing to a closed door with his boss's name printed on a wooden placard. "Yes, ma'am." "All right, well, back to work then." She walked off with sure footing in her heels, her sequin skirt catching the light from the room, reflecting it all in a sort of radiance around her. She knocked on the door and it opened wide enough for her narrow body to pass through. Watch looked out over the now empty alley. The pins were resting silently. The lights above the lanes caught the dust, risen from years and years of existence. He looked down at the mechanic's guide, the piston, its pieces, with lines in between, and he promptly shut the book. Thank you.
So, Mr. Stephen Van.
The pig. The rapture is what racked it against the cast iron pen when the bullet missed its eye, and the pig squandered that gift of seconds, seething and squealing, gnashing its teeth. When I torque the meat hook to spread jawbone from jawbone, it spits hot blood. What my bucket cannot capture flows, bone to snow, snow to sky, rising to steam, the pig's rapture. And it flows, and it rises, and it flows, and it rises, and it spreads itself to nothing in that pasture. Jade sky taking and taking, not filled, the pig not empty. In the barn, the rasp of knives makes ready within to tickle out these pockets of light. Mostly holes. Your thin angel prince goes to the window where you look down, warm hands, cold glass. And the sun still makes them new bodies of your stains each morning. I'd called you sparrow until one flew and broke itself against the kitchen's full quiet and folded its pinions like hands not clapping outside on the white pea gravel. I chose the wrong words when I told you about the dead, when the wind dampened it, making it shudder, making you shout, "It's waking!" Later at church, you asked, hadn't I seen it rising too? Then you unfolded your gift, one halved in half swathe of tissue paper, mostly holes full of light. You could see me through every chink when you held it up. But in summer, I laughed. You, not fooled, spread the snowflake in my palms. It was too light for me to walk quickly without it shuddering away. And you followed after, even to the door, making sure I held it close all the way home. Camera eye. A camera's eye spoke shapes into coruscated shade, and I blinked, but I could not hold on to those stars. And I imagined the terror when the first eclipse broke with thin, deft fingers of men from their souls. Could friction, stitches, could incantations, could hot tar or mortar, could our sun-slicked fixes fix it? No, but oh, to be held just so, turning over and over, with our souls stolen inside the illumination. A blue womb to hold us, to keep us together, tortured, to keep the lens swaying until it slept, until day lay against the sickle, and red light trickled from it, and we took a picture, and behold, it took us. Thank you.
And our last reader for the evening, Mr. Durante Matthews.
My poem is called Man-Made Motion. At 2 a.m., he is awakened to the sounds of startling noises. Catching his breath, he listens around, unrelieved that the noises are badgering male and female voices. So he sluggishly gets out of bed to get some air and breathe. Gazing blindly out of his windows at the cold, bitter Chicago streets, lost in the sight of glitter and flickering lights, trying desperately to block out the background noises of slamming doors and stomping feet, and a storm of chaos that started to ignite. 2-year-olds wailing, a hysterical woman assailing, a grown man screaming, "Get out of my way, bitch, I'm leaving." Bam! The door slams, and his hands shook as a result of the commotion, but he wouldn't react because he believed that fear was not a man's made emotion. 2:30 a.m., He exits to the sight of a bruised woman squatting on the floor, legs folded, arms crossed, blouse torn, and face sore. And closing his door, he approached her, and his eyes grew misty from the woman seductively smelling of cherry blossoms and whiskey. So he prepared a hot rag filled with ice cubes soaked in witch hazel and placed it gently on her swollen lip. And she swiftly unwrapped her arms from her hips and gave a slight grin as she mildly stroked his chin as a sign of maternal embrace. And she squeezed the rag harder on her face, struggled to her feet, and limped away humming the righteous gospel tune, Amazing Grace. But listening on, he knew that deep down, there was no sound sweet enough to save this wretch, that she was so lost she couldn't be found, and so blind she couldn't see a flame stricken from a match, and on that kitchen floor he stayed bound, empathizing his mother's pain caused an inner explosion, but he wouldn't give in because he believed that sorrow was not a man's main emotion. 3 a.m., he finally returns to his room and suddenly hears the somber tune of Luther Vandross playing in the next room, and it broke him. That distorted image of his mother almost beat half death, but he hoped if she couldn't get that blood off her lip, at least get that damn Jack Daniels off her breath. And the worst part was that he knew the guy who blackened her eyes would be happily invited once again to lay between her thighs and wrestle in her silk sheets covered with moonstones and crystal blue, hand-stitched by Creole women by the Louisiana Bayou. And at that moment, he fell to his bed with his emotions in a state of fusion, trapped in this rundown two-story apartment of warped delusion and emotional confusion, and there he lay, smothered, cocooned, wrapped in the safe haven of his comforters, sheets, and pillows, accompanied only by the slightest breeze invited into his room by his 2 barely cracked windows, slight enough to blow away the dust, the dirt, the grime left on his chest, almost as if people were wiping their feet on his heart, and he tossed and turned back and forth in distress, fragile and sore, almost afraid of falling on the wooden floors and shattering like crystal champagne glasses clinging on a New Year's Eve's toast. And after realizing that crashing into shards couldn't possibly make him feel any worse, he tightly gripped the edge of his metal bedpost and became enclosed in silence, entangled in the unsettling arms of dead air. There was no more Luther Vandross, no more maddening baby cries, no more sounds of sweaty bodies pounding beneath rhinestones and tired, worn-out sighs. Nothing. And the quiet started to inflame his body like piercing shingles on the skin. Amplified by the pain within, he started to dwell on the notion that he's a damaged male with his feelings expelled because he still can't tell what the hell is a man's main emotion. And after the stars twinkling above, shimmering light through his windows became brighter, he gripped that illuminated bedpost even tighter, and his eyes grew wet, teary, soaked like the stones in Lake Erie. But he wouldn't let the soft, sweet, moist, salty tears drop like raging waves crashing in the ocean because he believed that sadness, grief, weakness were not man-made emotions.
I see we're about to do the announcements. And first, actually, there was something I neglected at the beginning of the reading. Grahm Lewis's mother, Roberta, could not be here because she is feeling ill. But we need to give her a large round of applause. So we wish her well. I'm going to do the announcements a little differently than we did last year for a reason that will become apparent in a moment. I'm going to start with number 8, and then announce up to number 1, and the 9th place person will be read last, because according to the agreement that Mr. Butler created, the 9th place person is to be given special consideration, and that special consideration is in the bag next to my right foot. So when I get to the 9th place person, that person will come up and receive the illustrious gift before me. So without further ado, number 8, Mr. Ivory Wise. 7th place, Marjorie Clemente. Number 6, Mr. David Busbo. Fifth place, Mark Reed. Number 4, Stephen Nathaniel. Third place is T.J. Martinson. Second place, Emily Scarborough. And our first place winner, Durante Mack. I know you're ninth and everything, but we got something else for you if you don't mind coming up. We decided that the most appropriate gift to give the ninth place person, the Grahm R. Lewis Memorial Poetry Award, was an object that belonged to Grahm Lewis himself. He had many, many objects.